This is Tales from the Cube, a podcast about call centers, what it's like to work in them, the good, the bad, the ugly, the funny and not so funny side of what it's like working in a call center. Hello, I'm Cliff Tour. We all have opinions about our boss, company, and policies, and we all think we are right. Okay, fair enough. To an extent, we are right. Our opinions are valid and should be valued and wanted. But that is only sometimes the case in call centers and often other businesses as well. Call centers by nature tend to be autocratic environments. We say you do. And as I have mentioned in a previous episode, they tend to attract bullies. So criticizing and fixing the culture is definitely something of a challenge. Some companies are getting it and making changes, and others are not, sticking to the old we say you do. Kind of reminds me of an episode, or not so much of an episode, but of a show known as Dinosaurs. It was back in the 80s, and there was a company called We Say So. And this company basically did that. We say so, and the dinosaurs obeyed. In the end, of course, the dinosaurs died. That's a different topic for a different time, but you get the point. So how does one offer fair, unbiased opinions to leadership without risking their job? I will be addressing that in this episode of Tales from the Cube, episode 23015, Feedback to Your Boss and About Your Company. So the first rule of thumb is not to criticize your company openly. Going socially ape on the internet about the firm will land you in hot water. Many people have lost their jobs for laying down a smackdown of the company and the boss online. In the US and Canada, speech does have constitutional protections. To a point, not all speech is protected, and company leadership and corporations do take great offense when their staff publicly criticize them and, of course, the company. If you say something online, the comment should be factual and relate to working conditions. It should be about an act that they have committed that violates laws and regulations. In other words, they should be factual points. If you have any protection at all, it's going to be based on that. But if it does not, well, guess what? You could find yourself sued or fired or both. So it's better not to post online. Just don't do it. The bottom line is that saying something about your boss like, oh, my boss is a loudmouth who wears polka dot ties and a green wig all the time and he's an idiot, is definitely going to get you in trouble. Saying that my boss basically is a two-faced individual. He does one thing with one employee and another he does another thing, and I think it's because he's sleeping with her. That is really not going to get you in favor with them at all, or HR. So keep that offline. Even if your boss is doing something that's unprofessional, keep it offline. It's not worth risking, because that what you might think is happening may not be happening, and you could get yourself in some really, really, really bad situations where you get sued and you get fired, and it's not fun. Because particularly in the United States, as the joke goes, you can actually have a pencil suit. So pretty unpleasant things. So again, best just don't do it. So how do we vent? How do you let your leadership and the company know what you're not pleased with them about? Well, here's some bullet points here I'm going to go over. Share the feedback in private. Maintain a respectful tone. Don't assume your manager's motivations. Address the feedback as soon as possible. Keep your feedback focused on the work. And don't forget to share some positive feedback too. Okay, it's important that you do all of these things. And what I'm going to do is take a quick little break here, and we're going to dive right into that one by one after. All right, so stick around. I'll be back in about a minute, and we're going to dive into these points. Hi, I'm Cliff. I'm the host of Tales from the Cube, the podcast that you're currently listening to. You know, the one that talks about call centers and what it's like to work in them. I'd love to have you advertise with us here on the podcast. All you need to do is send me an email to foureyesfreelancing@gmail.com. That's the number 4, EYESFREELANCING @gmail.com. Put in the subject line Tales, or advertise in Tales, I'll get a package set up for you, and basically it'll be in the form of a 30, 45, or 60-second ad. You can get that right here on the podcast. And you know what? Why don't you do that right now? Why don't you click on that email, send it off to me, and I will get together with you and talk about the details about what we're going to do next to get your story told right here in the podcast. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, so we're back. So as I mentioned, share the feedback in private, maintain a professional and respectful tone, don't assume your manager's motivations, address the feedback as soon as possible, keep your feedback focused on the work, and don't forget to share positive feedback as well. So, I already mentioned that you should keep it private. This means to literally keep the feedback between you and your boss and other leadership, such as a senior manager or VPs or HR staff. They can help you as they could be an intermediary here between you and the boss. The good thing here is that you have some resources that you can tap into with regard to HR, and I would definitely engage with them. The goal should be to make your point and get an agreement with your boss and leadership on the issue you want addressed and what resolutions you would like to see happen, what you want to occur. You want to talk to these people, you want to get them to listen to you, and that's why you should keep it private. That's why you should bring in somebody from the HR team, and I'm going to dip into that a little bit more in a moment. The goal is to basically do this. So keep it private, keep it between you and your leadership. Start with your manager, and if it is something you want to address to higher management, then we go from there and we look at intermediaries. Watch your tone. Never be angry. Never let your anger get the better of you in a discussion. Easier said than done, of course, but really you want to have a respectful tone and think of the conversation as if you were speaking, of course, with the Dalai Lama. You would want to be polite with him. Even if you were very angry with the Dalai Lama, you would still want to express your thought in a respectful, polite tone that gets the point across without being rude. If the situation is highly sensitive, as I was mentioning before, you want to engage with HR, and there is a risk of this going south here, the conversation going south, ensure you have another person in the room as a witness with you to this discussion. Have somebody talking with you as well, guiding you, helping you out in this discussion. This person should be an HR specialist who is really, really skilled in de-escalating the situation. They should be somebody who is a skilled individual that knows how to de-escalate the situation and can bring peace to the room and essentially calm things down. So you do actually want a third party in the room. Unless it's less sensitive, then sure, just talk to your boss, or if you have feedback to your senior management, write a letter and make sure you include your boss. Again, keeping the professional tone is important. I've done this. I've actually done it, and it's worked out relatively well. Didn't get everything I wanted, but it has been done, and it does work. So essentially, you want to basically go forward and do that. And you want to have somebody at some point, if you're going to be having a really heavy conversation, in the room as a witness who is trained in de-escalation. And those are the people that are involved in the HR spectrum. You want to talk to them and bring them into the conversation. Do not assume that your boss has an agenda that targets you. Their motivation is not what is at play here. A team lead in a call center has a boss, who in turn also has a boss, and so on. The decision to do something or set a policy may not be in their control. You should find out what is behind the decision or the policy that has been established before offering any feedback to them on it. In other words, know what you're talking about. Don't just go in there, guns blazing, and at them. Hey, wait a minute, find out why they did this, why they made the decision to go forward and for, X, Y, Z reason, they changed the policy. Whether it's about the cloakroom, or whether it's about food at the desk, or whether it's about when you're going to take your lunch, or how you're supposed to take your lunch. They have a reason for it, so you should basically try and figure out why. And then you can feed back and say, well, all right, here's what I think. Which basically brings me to the next point. Don't let this linger. If you're upset and want to feedback that upset, you should do it as soon as possible. But before doing so, cool off. If you're really angry, dial yourself down, cool it off. Stay on topic. The feedback is not about the boss. It is about the policy or decision regarding the performance based on your behavior, or the policy that's basically been changed. If you are always late, that will draw a review of your procedures and application of steps to correct the issue. That's going to be taken. All right, so if you're doing something that violates a policy or causes an issue here, you're going to be on the hook for this. So if your stats are not where they're supposed to be, that will be addressed. However, if the actions taken look out of place or seem unreasonable, you want to let your boss know what is happening that may affect these things, like being on time for work or your stats. Some policies are just dumb. Okay, quite frankly, they're dumb, and you know it. You can give feedback on what you think and why you believe it, which may bring about little or no change. Okay, you should understand that. At least you have made your voice heard, and any company or leadership should be smart enough to respect that, and in some cases they may want to reconsider the policy or other decisions that they have made. Of course, for that to happen, enough staff have to let them know that what they thought was a bright idea could be more or less not so brilliant after all. They may or may not change it, but they can only do that if you give feedback to them on why or why not you're so keen or not so keen on the policy or decision to change a thing in the company. Okay, so the decision to do one thing or a policy being made, if you're going to basically feedback and say that's dumb, make sure that you have enough backup to do this, so that if the company sees that 80% to 90% of the staff don't like this, they're going to look and go, They may not change it, but a smart company is going to go and look and say, hey, maybe we need to review this. There's something we're missing here. And they might find it and say, yeah, that's true. Okay, we went wrong here. Let's go back to the old way of doing this, or let's find a better way of doing this. Last but not least here in this particular conversation is that we do want to offer some positive feedback. Companies and managers don't always get it wrong. In fact, most of the time they do actually get it right when it comes to policy and decision making regarding the direction of the company. So tell them, let them know when they are doing something well, and accept responsibility when you are not in line with the following company policies or procedures. Always remember that your job basically is to help the customer, or do the phone calls, make the outbound calls and whatnot. And there's definitely some policies that are in there, and compliance rules and things like that, and you have to follow them. So please take the time to understand those policies and know what they are, and decisions regarding the way the company is going, and appreciate that, and understand that you're not always going to basically win the day. Sometimes it just comes down to this fact: you're not in the right here, so you have to accept whatever corrective action. And when you are in the right, you basically should go forward and explain why, and hopefully gain agreement that you are correct and you can fix the issue, and everything should basically pan out to making the situation a better, more productive, more cohesive environment for everybody. Because what you feed back to the company can ultimately help everybody in the company, and not just yourself. So try and think of that as well when you're doing feedback. So basically, to summarize here, what we want to do is not do this online. We want to stay positive. We want to do it immediately. We want to do it in a private manner, privately with the person. And we want to make sure and ensure that we have somebody with us if there's a chance of this really going south. And at the end of the day, we want to always be in our most professional tone in any kind of interaction. We want to remind ourselves that we may think we're right, but we're not. And lastly, particularly, speech is protected, but not all speech is protected. So learning that and understanding that and keeping it offline is an extremely important thing. I want to say thanks for taking the time today to visit with us here. Tales from the Cube, of course, is a podcast about call centers and how they work and the good, the bad, the ugly, and the funny stuff that goes on. It is a really interesting kind of job to do. And it's like any other business. There are good things and not so good things that happen in a call center. And there are some positive changes that are actually happening in call centers. I have to say that there's some good stuff going on. And there are not some good things that are still going on. It's a work in progress, and we all basically have to do our best to adhere to the changes and the things that are going on, and basically work with the people who are in leadership and try and help them out through our participation, including feedback. I'll be back with more episodes of Tales from the Cube. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the next episode. My name is Cliff. Take care. Thanks for listening to Tales from the Cube. You can hear us on all the major podcast platforms such as Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. We'll see you in the next episode.